This show is proudly brought to you by the #Me Network.
Hi listeners and welcome to Access Granted Mobile Edition.
The mobile edition.
We're out and about and well, we were in studio too, but it got a bit busy, didn't it?
It got very busy in Goldings, I have to say. So this is our last one of 2014, is that
I
right?
believe so.
So this is our wrap up of the year, and what we've done is we've gone through all of our interviews. Well, some of us have gone through all of our interviews.
I've gone through some.
Yeah. And by the time you're hearing this, of course, Raj will have finished all of them.
Yes.
And we've taken, not the gold nuggets, but the ones that have been the highlights for ourselves, and we've taken them out and we've put them all together. So you're going to hear a highlight show, basically.
Yeah. Roll tape.
Right, so the first ones we've got, we're going to do it in batches of 4, and we're going to do it in, not alphabetical, chronological order.
Yeah. Episode by episode.
Episode by episode. And the first one we did was episode 3, and that's when I said to a good friend of mine, Victoria, Vic, at Optimal BI, would you help out with our podcast and can we come and interview you?
And she took pity on us and said, yeah.
And she did. And so we got, first up is Vic, and then we got Sam Rye, Sam from the Inspiral group. And then we got Steve Graham, he's from Signal 41. And then we first got our first overseas interview. Well, it's not overseas, it's John Curtis from...
Overseas, it doesn't count, it's the same island still, eh?
That's right.
Although it's over at Lake Taupo, so that's overseas.
Lake Taupo. So that's what we're going to hear right now. One of the phrases I heard was not necessarily that the business is not here in Wellington or it's more in Auckland, and it will be more in Auckland because, hey, it's where a third of the population lives, but it's easier to do business in Auckland. And that is potentially a black and white between government and private enterprise. Is that something you've heard?
It's something I've heard and it's something I've experienced. Doing business in Auckland and even doing business in Sydney, it happens a lot faster.
Yeah.
So there's a fundamental issue where government don't appreciate how long it takes for them to go through an engagement process. We've just had an example with a government agency where we've got probably the one person in the market that can do the work for them. They were busy on another project. It was all hurry up, we want to do it now. And then it took them 4 weeks to get the statement of work signed off because they had to go through their approval process. And what do they expect us to do? Leave our person sitting on the bench for 4 weeks while they get their paperwork done. Whereas in Auckland we've done work with, admittedly in the finance sector, but basically rock up, talk about it, scope the work, it's signed up, and we're doing it within a week. It's a completely different engagement model.
Yeah. With enterprise, it's usually a cost issue if it takes too long, right, to do something.
Absolutely, and for us, it turns us off as a supplier. It's kind of, we spend our time thinking, well, we don't want to do work with that government agency anymore.
Because people are going to apply as individuals and join the team, create a team within the lab. So we've basically picked up on the sort of overwhelming research from accelerators and incubators around the world that says people. Don't start with the ideas, start with the people. Right. So we're actually taking that to the extreme in terms of inviting 20 people from all over New Zealand who may never have actually even met each other, and then taking them through this process to get to know one another and then build the teams and the ideas within the lab.
So just on his thing, because a lot of what I hear about, particularly in Wellington, and we talked about it briefly before, and we've talked about it a million times, is that there's no developers. We've saying Zero's trying to suck people out of the UK and bring them here. Yeah. Is that still the case? I mean, because government departments are full of these people doing .NET.
Yeah. So are there no developers? Is that your question?
Yeah.
No developers?
Do you think it's...
No, I don't. Look, I hear that a lot. There's not enough, but I just feel like there is. You'll figure out a way, to find that right talent to attract them, So particularly if you've got a valuable, a kind of pretty cool value proposition in terms of what you're doing. Yeah. So we've got 4 other of our staff, and they're, all of them are, I think, under 23, 24. They're young guys, with not a lot of experience. Yeah. And the one thing is there's this parallel stuff they talk about, innovation and ideas. really coming in organizations, and I think McKinsey is one of the big did some research on it. There's a strong association with youth. You want, because as we talked about, there's not the barriers to get in the way. No, we can't do it that way here. They don't have that. They don't have that experience. So let's just do it this way, right? So no, in fact, I would have to say that they just don't know. Talking to a lot of government organizations, they know that they need youth. They need young people, new ways of thinking, new models. They do, but they're not quite certain how to go about it. Like Code for America. Have you heard of that program? It's like, why not bring that concept here? Because that infusion of youth, that infusion of energy, And I imagine if you're a younger person and you worked in one of these government departments, you should probably approach your senior manager and say, let's look at this thing different. Let's go. Yeah. You talk about it. We talk about innovation, new ideas. Let's do some stuff different.
Yeah. So a lot of as you're talking, I was thinking that the talent's not there, and it could be because people are looking in the traditional places.
Yeah.
Whereas the talent is there. But they're doing their own thing in different ways, different places, and so you open the box. There's no one here. It's like, because they're not in the box. Yeah. They're everywhere else.
Exactly. Well, I think the concept that the talent is here concept, again, I see that as emerging in terms of that model change. The talent it's accessible for where I am in terms of I might go to Romania. They got some kick-ass mathematic guys, right? Or I might go to India, or I might go to California. I don't know where I'm going to go, but I might attract that kind of resource. Yeah. And in fact, they might even come over here, but if not, it doesn't matter. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So for us, for example, Signal 41, we know that we the guys that are kind of chief data scientists are physics guys, PhD guys, and stuff. So we might tap that here, and there might be more somewhere else within New Zealand that through that network. We might have to go to Melbourne, wherever that capability is, that cluster of that kind of capability. We might have to tap into that.
Look at a web page you bring up. Look at Facebook. You've got to look at each of those little snippets of information. I said the F word.
Facebook.
I don't even have a Facebook account, so I'm using the F word in a general term. Look at any website, but in particular, Facebook impresses me every time I look at it because it's got so many little tidbits of information that it pulls in from everywhere. These things have to be sourced from such a variety of different places and bunged onto your screen inside a second. How do you think they get there? So that sort of sparked a conversation about there's more to this than literally meets the eye. And it had them really think deeply about what these things come from. Someone had to write that. They don't look at software like you and I do on a phone or whatever and go, oh, that's a cool app, because it must do this and that for it to work. They just look at it and go, I expect this to work. They don't look at it deeper than that. So actually breaking that ice and going, have a look at what do you think goes into this is a really fun experiment.
So then we spoke to Laura Reitel from Creative HQ and Lightning Lab, Grant Searson from Vision College.
And this was Fid. Fid did this interview.
Fid interviewed them, yep. He took one for the team and ran up and did it, even though he was only a few minutes away. Then episode 9, we had Ben Northrop from Run the Red, who recently sold his company. And then we had Natalie Ferguson, which I remember we had that rough red, beautiful red wine, yeah.
The point around Wellington, are you focused on Wellington per se? You just said that Lightning Lab is going to be moving. Lightning Lab is moving around. Do you see that Wellington, Auckland, Christchurch, Dunedin, all the main centres, are they different in the way that they approach startups?
Yeah.
I'm trying to that voice of Wellington that we may or may not have. Does Auckland have a voice, for instance, or does Christchurch have its own voice?
Yeah, so I don't know maybe to answer that in depth because I've only been in New Zealand for a year, but from what I know is, from what I've heard from people and visiting those places, and the impression I get from that is Dunedin, for example, has a very, very strong university. Some of the great technologists and also startups are coming out of Dunedin, but they move elsewhere because apparently people leave Dunedin because there's nothing else to do than besides uni. Yeah. And that's a sad thing, and I wish they really leverage that more. In terms of Christchurch is very active. Their community is actually incredibly active after the earthquakes. With the Epic Centre and now Lighting Lab moving in, but also the University of Canterbury Entrepreneurial Club there, run by students, is very active. And what I've noticed is there's more hardware companies coming out of Christchurch.
Oh, okay. Physically, things you can touch.
Exactly. So that might potentially be their niche.
Yeah.
Whereas I guess Auckland would be more for business, telecom, financial.
The boring stuff. Yeah. No, don't have to agree
boring,
with it.
no.
I said it. It's okay.
But yeah, they probably have more of that going on. Wellington has the government.
The boring stuff.
The boring stuff, but government that, from what I'm also gathering and from your talks with Stephen last week, is really trying to innovate internally, which is a great indication, and also opens hopefully more gates for local small businesses to actually get involved and help them innovate.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Hopefully,
Yes.
And Wellington has definitely as you said, the hipster thing going for it. Microbreweries, cool place to hang out.
Yeah.
It's a great place to live, and I think, so is Queenstown, but Queenstown doesn't yet, at least, have the tech scene that we already have. Mm-hmm. So I think in terms of moving to a place where people actually want to spend their time and lives. Yeah. Wellington has that going for it. Yeah. And I think, high tech capital initiative by Grow Wellington and is again a really good way to promote the city as a destination.
In learning environments, it's nothing like real world sort of learning, and people coming out with experience on how to build a website, how to do this and software, blah blah blah. But they're not learning how to deal with clients and that sort of thing. What does Vision provide that, as opposed like anything to get people ready to actually deal with their clients?
One of the things I've pushed for right from the start was that students that are coming to the course from day one start building up clients. So one of the things I ask every day is the first thing in the morning is, okay, what's the news out there, what events are out there, and who's got new clients? Because by the end of 1 year, if you haven't built up clients that you can use as a portfolio for a potential employer or to start you off as a freelancer, then the jobs that are out there, people say, we're looking for 3 years experience or 5 years experience. If you are trying to start building your experience when you finish the course, that's a little bit too late. You really need to be building the experience right from day one. And the advantage there, of course, is that during the course, you've got all your other students and the tutors who are able to help you with those clients to actually build up that relationship, to build up that portfolio.
We went and found a great partner in a company called Emma Inc., an email marketing firm based in Nashville, Tennessee, y'all.
Of course.
I say y'all a lot over there. Y'all ready for this? Y'all. And they've got an office in Seattle as well. It's kind of like the Wellington of America. Cold and windy, but cool. And these guys liked our vision for evolving the text messaging platform to a self-managed tool. And they also like the idea of adding messaging to what they were doing, rapidly growing email marketing services and vice versa. So by the grace of God, these guys put some money into us just at a time when the bank had told us no, they weren't going to extend their overdraft like I'd asked for. In fact, we had to pay it back in 3 months. And if we didn't, they were going to close the doors.
That's great.
We all know that it's lovely when they have that conversation.
Yeah.
It's a good one. So we were, not only were we stretched far too thin in multiple countries with a huge bunch of staff, low annuity revenue, but we now have the bank telling us that they're going to call us in.
They're going to shut you down.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, guys. Love your support. Like an umbrella in the sun. They're always there when you don't need it. Friends of the bank. So we had to make some tough decisions and essentially sat around and pulled out of Brazil. We sold that to our joint venture partners and got out of there. We pulled back our efforts in Australia and America. and we use the funding from our partners in the States, after talking with them, to really focus on our technology and move away from the services side, which is expensive because, again, we found ourselves in the same position and then a high staff cost.
Right.
So any expansion was high, any exit was relatively low because it's service-based, and we want to get back on that product field. So we started investing into our environment, into our platform, and making it much more of a product play.
Should women in tech have a space of their own? We should probably talk about that.
Yeah, we can talk about that really quickly because I
Yeah.
did think of something to say when I was practicing.
We both said yes, by the way.
Yeah, I think in anything in life, it's all about balance, right? So I don't think it should be a women's versus a men thing, or we need our own space. I think there is a role to play with women's groups in supporting a certain element of the world as it is today and being a breeding ground for things to happen, you know, like the relationships to be formed, support to be made, people to get confidence, and then you go back out into the real world. I don't believe that women's groups should be a big thing, but I think until we figure out how to, you know, balance things out a bit more, they play a role.
Absolutely.
But that's about as far as I care about it, I think. Like, I think anyone I know...
Well, you say that, but you set it up.
Yeah, because I set it up because we didn't have... Well, we did have one. We had an unofficial one. We had a group of females founders who went out regularly and moaned in a way that we didn't around other people.
It's just a night out. Night out.
And then we thought, can we justify this drinking? Maybe we should formalise it.
Get yourself a meet-up and now it's official.
Yeah.
So does it still go? You still
Yes,
have...
and it's really successful. I'm surprised because I think, like, we were all quite awkward about it because we're all fairly strong people and we're not really big fans of, oh, woe is me, I'm a woman. Like, that doesn't sit well with me. I've stood up on my own for long enough now. I don't need a women's group. But it's weird how many random people have come out of the woodwork and, like, very successful people. Like, we had someone from Air New Zealand coming and talk to us a couple of weeks ago, and she was fascinating. Like, and I suppose this is the difference, is you go to a lot of tech events and she would turn up and you'd be talking about development languages or sort of like what we're talking about now. Whereas she turned up there and we talked about what it's like to get divorced and have that's the whole conversation was being a solo mum and how do you have a career around that. Nothing to do with tech, even though what we anticipated talking about was tech. And it's just a different flow, and I don't know if it can be replicated in other situations. I've just personally never had it in other situations. So but I don't want to do that all the time because, like I say, with being insular in Wellington, I don't want to live in a world where we all sit around and say how hard it is to do this stuff. It's nice to acknowledge it sometimes and get ideas from people, but we're pretty blunt with each other. But no, it's really successful. There's a whole range of people from uni students who've come in who are looking at working for themselves or really have no idea what they want to do, right the way through to some people that, I mean, super impressive people.
And then following on from Natalie at episode 10, we have Lou Draper from Loud in Public, who talks about, in episode 11, publicity, not PR. And then Owen Williams was a fantastic one. He used to work for Hoist. Now he's moved on to Charged and works for NextWeb, I do believe.
Yeah.
That was a great one. Bruce Elwood from Soda, PSODA. Again, one of those startups in Wellington that is just doing it without a lot of people knowing, and they've put out some fantastic news recently. And finally, a good friend of mine, Owen Evans, a fellow Welshman, and he's from Hoist Apps, and we had a great old time in Studio One.
I met one company a couple of months ago, and he wasn't able to tell me what his business did or what the story was or what it was about. He could tell me all of the technical functions of it and how it operated internally, but not actually, this is my business, this is what it does, this is how it benefits my future customers.
You've been here for 4 years and then tech came along into your life. How did you make that transition? Now, in my mind, I've got 50 coffees approach. Do you want to explain
50 coffees.
50 coffees was?
50 coffees. Okay, so there is a gentleman in LA, Peter, I've forgotten his last name, sorry, Peter. He came up with this concept in business that when you start a new business, if you start it or make any major changes, you need to discuss that change with 50 people, take them out for coffee and get their their feedback on what it is that you want to do and get their insight, and then see if that's still the path that you want to take.
People naturally gravitate to, San Francisco. That's where all the startups are. It's actually, there's a lot of startups there, but it's not that cool. It's a little bit wanky. Well, everybody has their free...
Aucklanders and Hamiltonians listening to this thing.
We went to... I was just visiting there just for our holiday, and we went to see Yammer headquarters just to see what it's like. And they're a Microsoft company now, so they're kind of a startup, kind of not. You know, they're in that kind of weird moment. But we were getting a tour, and he's like, everything in the cafeteria is free. Why don't you take something? And I'm like, what do you mean? And you walk in there, and it's just lined with these fridges. Every drink you can imagine, every drink you can imagine in a supermarket is there free. You just walk in and take it. And they're like, he was saying, if you don't offer that, people might not work for you. It's as simple as that. And so everybody's doing all these things. You get free gym access, you get free this, free that.
And that becomes company culture.
Right, and it's good because we don't have that here yet, which I like. Okay, we have slides.
We have slides. Upgraded slides.
Much to Rod's disgust. He doesn't have a slide
When it becomes a water slide, then you wonder what the hell's going on.
Well, then it'll be the battle of the slides.
Yeah.
Oh, do you not have a water slide?
Yeah, with Coke going down it. No, you don't have that.
Yeah, it's an interesting problem. So I like that we don't have that here yet. People are a lot more humble to some extent about.
That's good. Or real even.
Yeah,
as in it doesn't really matter. It's right. I'm gonna go.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll just pop down the road and buy a Coke. I'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll survive.
I think the flexibility stuff's more important than I get cool stuff at work.
Yeah.
I can go in and out when I like, that kind of stuff.
Work with a team that's real. They don't mind if it's not more about. It's less about having bums on seats for 40 hours than it is doing the work,
getting the outcomes.
So that's quite cool.
It's interesting to hear you talk about that. There's lots of people talk about it, but very few people
do it.
Well, they do it, or they manage to do it well. Did you start off the company with this is the way it's going to be?
Absolutely. And it's part of the philosophy of we're an online business, so should we have a physical office? No. Should we have people working in a physical office? No. And using online tools to do our job. So we use online accounting, we use online GoToMeeting or Skype or those kind of tools. And so our tool set is also designed to be used virtually rather than necessarily in an office where everybody's in one place. So a lot of the principle or even philosophy is around allowing people to work from anywhere, get to their project, get to their data, and be able to do their job. So one of the tools that we've got in there, for example, is a electronic whiteboard, where everybody could share the whiteboard. They can draw on their whiteboard and it's shared across all of the whiteboards in real time. So instead of having to be in front of the same whiteboard, you've now got that virtual whiteboard happening.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So having that as a vision from the start, as opposed to, I suppose, applying it to a company that...
An existing company. Yeah. So taking a company out of an office and doing virtual is much harder.
Yeah.
Because you've established processes and culture and things around an office. Whereas if you built it up from a virtual point of view from the start, then you're building up a culture in that kind of environment.
Yeah. The
WDC
meaning
Web Developer Conversations New Zealand. So
conversation.
Yeah. So we were very.
That changes my conversation that we had before.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it was very much never set up to be a con. So you see where I'm going there. So it was our original name was Web Dev Con, and we decided we didn't like con.
Yes.
So WDC was kind of what it came up to, and we kind of didn't want a classic conference of, hey, sit in a room and get lectured at. For me, a conference is about the things that happen between talks. It's the meetings that you have over drinks or nibbles, the random people that you would never meet anywhere else because they've all come together. And really, the reason why I set up WDC is I was working in the web, and there are a bunch of other people who are working in the web.
During your time at Xero, is that right?
Yeah. So we're now in the fourth year, so it was 2010 was our first conference. And I had 3 months to set that up. It was a tweet I sent out and said, hey, would anybody be interested in getting together as web developers and talking about how we deliver software, essentially? Whether you're working in Ruby, Python, .NET, we weren't getting in the same room and actually saying, well, we're still delivering over HTTP, and you know, it's still a browser at the end of the day. We kind of have the same challenges. And a lot of people said, yep. And I was in a staff meeting like 2 days later. At that time there were like 50 staff in the whole of Xero, and Rob basically said, right, go with it, do it, and gave me permission to use Xero to sponsor the event. Essentially, we had to run it to budget, but you know, they would help me out as much as they could. And then Charlotte Hinton's been my co-founder essentially. So she was head of parties at Xero. She's got the best job title. She's just transitioning out of Xero, let's put it that way. But she had the best job title as head of parties. So she got to be my conference organizer. So she's been helping me out run the conference for the last 4 years. Doesn't take much of it. It's two of us working on it full time. Well, you know, when we get the time to work on it, and then we get 2 or 3 helpers on the day. But it's really a small staff, small scale. But the key is we bring in people that I or people have mentioned to me would be really interesting to hear, and get them in front of New Zealand developers so that they see that there's a whole industry.
Very much focused that those people that ready for this, make the computers do what they do
on the web.
Next up, we have episode 15, and we ran into some weird character on episode 15. Who was that guy?
We interviewed you, Raj.
Oh,
episode 15.
Some fantastic character in there.
It was very cool.
And followed from that, episode 16 was our election special, where we scoured the country, tweeted it out like buggery, asking everyone to send us their MPs or you know, ask the MPs to join us, and we managed to get Gareth Hughes, Claire Curran, Tracy Martin. We didn't get National or the Internet Party. I guess the fax machine was broken at Internet Party's head office.
That's right.
And then we cracked on with that, and that was a good little special.
Was.
And then after that, we talked to John O'Tucker from Empire Films and John O'Tucker Photography. He's also Run the Red alumni. He used to work at Run the Red. That's where I first met him. And then we ran into, or talked to, on episode 18, we talked to Michelle Dickinson, a.k.a. Nano Girl, science geek lady. What else she calls herself?
That'll do.
Yeah, that'll
Listen to the goodness within. So, if you look back to I suppose the first days, the first years of Haynes and those earlier companies, and how they worked and the environment and the industry they're in.
Oh, yeah.
And now,
yeah.
What's the biggest change?
Biggest change, I think, is the communication and the way we use technology to do that has changed a lot. The messages and the ideas are still, you know, they're newer, but they're still ideas that you'd come across back in the day. But now there's just faster ways to do things, smarter ways to do things. And you can apply some of that old school thinking to these new channels, things like that.
Yeah.
And that I've noticed a difference. Company culture-wise, you notice a little bit of a change because people are a bit more relaxed. So for me, I work in and out of the office. I'm all over the place. And so back then, that wasn't the case. Everyone was in the office. Ball and chain, straight to the desk.
Yeah.
You churn out your work. Now, you can be anywhere. I can be anywhere and do what I do. That's the biggest change.
So it's much more relaxed, much more,
Well, they're open to the flexible working ethic or work environment, right? And so you notice that with the bigger boys, you know, everyone's got hot desks or even bean bags that they sit on and go somewhere else, and in the slides and all that kind of thing. So check out that video. I went down the TradMe slide the other day and I chucked it up online. It's actually quite fun. And so the way we
such a hard time on Access Grounded podcast.
I know. Yeah, my slide. But
no,
it
wasn't the slide. It was the news reporting of tech.
Yes,
wasn't
that's
it?
right.
That
yes,
was the issue.
Because that was the big story.
Yes.
Well, you know, there is more to it than that.
Yeah.
I had a look around. They've got lockers as well. If you want to report on that.
Lordy.
So TV1, I'll just spit that story out for TV1 to cover, shall I? They have lockers. Wow, really? How innovative. And one last question. What innovations are you looking forward to the most? For example, one of our listeners asked, can I have a robot dog? Of course, it's Labour's Claire Curran up first, followed by the Greens' Gareth Hughes, and finally NZ First, Tracy Martin.
What I would really like is time travel.
Oh, that'd be handy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That would make going to Parliament a lot easier.
You were late. No, I wasn't. Give me 3 seconds.
It would make everything very weird. I guess I'm a Doctor Who fan, so you know I'm right into all that stuff. But I've also watched The Fly, and so getting stuck in something with a, you know, where all your molecules change and you end up with half fly, half human, is a bit of a risk. But as they say, with every new development, there's risk.
We might see some robot dogs in the future. Actually, some Kiwi students are leading the world when it comes to the robotic championships. I think maybe 3 of the big trends or innovations I'm really excited about is digital manufacturing, additive manufacturing, 3D printing.
Oh, yeah.
I've done a great deal of research into this over the last couple of years, met a lot of our printers and makers across the country. This is, again, a great way we can develop our economy, particularly as we've lost most of our low-value manufacturing. It's something The Economist said could be as important as the coming of the factory was, so it's important we're up to speed there. Likewise with the Internet of Things, I'm really excited about that connected world we can be part of. And in my other portfolio, energy, we can truly have a smarter electricity grid where customers actually have control over their appliances, when they purchase electricity, when they sell it from clean sources like solar. And I'm really excited about the opportunities of smart electricity grid, kind of akin to the internet, because we've thought about electricity for 100 years, kind of like water pipe engineers just pushing it down one way. We need to start thinking about it more like computer science engineers.
I'm a Trekkie. I really loved Star Trek. And so the one thing I would look forward to is actually teleportation.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's nice. Good one. Yeah.
Particularly if I have to, if I could just get to Christchurch and then get back within like 5 minutes after each meeting, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Then you can live anywhere you like.
Yeah.
Exactly. See?
I'm liking this.
And it would solve, and you see the Greens have got to support that as well, because we wouldn't have all that airplane fuel.
Oh, so that solves the transport problems.
Exactly. So, I think we should be putting major research into teleportation.
Excellent. I love it.
I'm joking. I'm just joking. Somebody picks that up and puts it on the Herald.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Okay. The only one other thing, and it might seem disconnected from this conversation about ICT, and that is actually around the creative arts and the importance of keeping a creative education system and the importance of supporting the humanities and the creative arts inside our universities and inside our school, because I happen to think that if we don't, then the digital environment is going to suffer. So I just want to make that point that the ICT environment is very dependent on keeping our school system open, creative and flexible, and our young people being given thinking time to create in this environment.
So the storytelling part is the bit that's the key. You're a storyteller. Whether you're the actual storyteller or you're the pet photographer, you're trying to tell a story.
And to be fair, I think while I love that term, I almost feel it's overused in the industry because everyone goes around saying, I'm a storyteller, and I think it is the truth, because that's all we want to do is say we tell stories that people connect with, and that we tell stories of this journey or this growth or whatever. But it's, when every website you go to of everyone in my industry says, "Oh, I'm a storyteller," you're like, "No, yawn." So on one hand you get over it, but it is the truth.
It's true with everyone is.
Yeah.
Nobody is.
If you can't connect with it, if you can't connect with the story, you're never going to share it.
Yeah.
So,
how about yarn spinner?
Yeah. I heard somebody the other day ranting about it, and they said there's one guy who's a roller coaster designer. He's like, I'm a storyteller. I want my roller coasters are a story, and it's like, oh, yawn.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, but you can see how creatives in most positions could use that, and it's like, well, you don't, you're not J.K. Rowling, you're not a storyteller.
Can you tell a story by just screaming the whole time?
Yeah.
Vomit maker. I am chief vomit maker. And poop baker.
Okay, so Nano Girl's my alter ego, obviously. My real name is Michelle Dickinson.
Oh, what?
And I know, I'm sorry. I didn't wear my cape, otherwise I'm Nano Girl then. And so I'm a nanotechnologist, and I have a lab here up at Auckland University that breaks nano things. So I run a nanomechanical fracture lab that I built 5 years ago, and basically I do a lot of devices, so hardware that come in. Basically hard drives have a 4 nanometer DLC thin film on the surface, and so I test the rigidity of those, make sure that they're scratch resistant. So I do a lot of high-tech stuff that comes through my lab, and that's what I basically do.
So you make money out of breaking shit.
And never having to put them back together.
That's awesome.
How do you get
Which
that
is
job?
the best.
That's awesome.
Like, I didn't think that existed, right? Because when you're a kid, you break stuff
Yeah.
and your parents are like, don't break that. And then I found that I could do that and people pay me.
I remember getting in trouble for breaking my TV as a kid.
All the time. I'm old enough to have a video recorder and literally owned it for a day. And I was like, how does this work? Took it apart. We never watched videos again.
Yeah. So
you must have a massive sense of curiosity.
A little bit too big sometimes, but yeah. I always want to know how things work, and I think it's really good to not just accept the technology, but to understand the fundamentals of how it happens so that you can actually be part of it. Otherwise, we're going to have a generation of kids who just don't understand how things work and become the disposable society, right? Because if you don't know how to fix it, then you throw it away and buy a new one.
Yeah.
And we've got to realise that there's a lot of rare earth metals that go into these and a lot of things that aren't renewable.
Yeah.
Let's think about fixing things rather than disposing them. And to fix things, you sort of have to know how they work.
After that episode with Michelle, or maybe before actually, this is where we started to think it's about the interviews, isn't it? We got told by a few people.
We got some feedback, and we took it on board.
So
going forward,
we got we got some serious into just doing the interviews.
Yeah.
Michelle was up at Tech Ed. She was our first interview at Tech Ed. So you've just heard from her. And then we met a whole bunch of Tech Ed people. Steve Martin, who is from Microsoft, and the Estimate team. They were the Imagine Cup winners. That was episode 19. You'll hear from those guys. And then one of my favourite interviews, actually, was from Andy Wigley. He's from Microsoft. I would say Microsoft UK. He's one of their developer evangelists. He was awesome. I know one of your actual favourites, Raj, was episode 21, which was Mark Woodrow and Luke Grange, and they're from Microsoft and Yammer.
Yeah. Yeah, they were the refreshing part of that whole Microsoft expedition we did to Auckland.
Yeah, you really enjoyed those guys.
It's just different. They thought different.
And then we're going to end this little section here with episode 22, which with one of my, again, one of my Welsh friends here, but DK, who famously runs the Wellington TEDx events and does an awful lot of innovation work here. So catch up with the goldness from those guys.
Well, with concerns around security, how does Microsoft intend to protect us in the cloud?
I'm actually going to talk about security in the keynote today, which I think is a really important area. And then there was some bad press over the last week or two on this particular topic, and it is top of mind. And while brute force attacks on an individual level are certainly disappointing, and there's things that various companies are doing to help with that. We do a variety of things today. We support two-factor authentication for customers. We actually have multi-factor authentication as a service. So anybody that's running a cloud service or any service for that matter can add multi-factor authentication through a service that we provide, and it's just dirt cheap to add that, and we'd encourage developers to use it where it makes sense. We also think that too much of the dialogue right now is about external security. A far bigger issue in IT in the world in general is not external security, it's internal security. And while external hacking gets good press, the reality is IT and businesses every single day deal with the reality of leakage of sensitive information through their employee base. And so we continue to encourage customers to be very vigilant on external security. But I would counsel anyone to spend 3 times as much money protecting yourself from internal threat. And not just threat, but through process leaks and just general failures. There's a lot of content, unfortunately, across organizations that are emailed and get out that shouldn't. And so we encourage our customers to don't get overly fixated on external, but pay attention to internal security as well.
I love. I particularly love getting my hands on the new stuff and finding out what it can do. Because what it's like when a new SDK comes along. You get a bit of information, but you need to really get in and build stuff, and then find out exactly what you can do and push it until it breaks. And so that's what I love doing that. It's the break stuff.
And then tell the world.
Yeah, exactly, and that's exactly what I love doing. And then once you've figured out some way, not necessarily all on your own. There's the fantastic developer community out there, and you're bouncing stuff off people. But if you can figure out how to do something cool and then share it in a conference talk or a blog or something, that's a pretty nice thing to do. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Actually, it's much easier than writing out, finishing, shipping stuff, I mean, let's be honest here. Let's be honest here. The fun stuff, solving the technical problem, that's the fun bit, and then you've got to kind of get it ship ready, and that's, you know.
And then you get into the process and the way it goes.
Yeah.
And I've always thought, you know, code sort of just fades away from you in the distance. You go, oh, it's my baby. And then eventually you see it on something. Oh, there you are. Oh, nice to see you again. All grown up.
Different organisations have a different maturity around where they are with regards to these kinds of tools and what they're using. And Simon Terry, who actually established Yammer at the National Australia Bank, has developed what he calls the value maturity model. And it's a 4-stage model, which I think depicts where an organisation may be. And it starts with connecting. So what you'll find is in an enterprise social world, people will connect individuals with other individuals. So it'll be like, oh, is there anybody in accounts who would know about this kind of P&L? And somebody will then respond to that and say, yeah, there is somebody, his name's Mark Anthony. And that's about it. So that's sometimes where the conversation ends, and you're like, well, these threads are not going very far. This Yammer product's probably not working. But if you actually find out what's happening is that person then phoned Mark Anthony. Yeah. Or emailed Mark Anthony. So it is actually being useful. Yeah, so exactly. So this connecting part then moves into sharing, where people start to share information with each other. And that's a very sort of an interesting time, because you suddenly start saying, I need a presentation, I'm going out to visit a financial institution, and it's to a marketing officer. Is there anybody who's got a presentation out there that might help me? And somebody comes through with that presentation that's going to start smooth the way for that organisation or that individual to get more benefit from it. So that sharing starts to come in. And the next part is where we speak about solving. And that's where problems start to get solved in the enterprise solution. And this is quite a mature stage. It's where people start to fix things. Like, if you did this and this, that would solve that problem. And then somebody chimes in and says, I've actually tried that didn't work, but if you did this, so it's actually get very mature.
I think it's a cultural question rather than a specific innovation question.
Okay.
Which leans into the answers I used to give around social media and still give, which I don't think it's a person's job, and I don't think it's a specific platform, for example.
Okay.
It's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
You know, the idea of sharing and being transparent and reaching out and celebrating your community, and celebrating them through featuring their content, and by doing that align yourselves and blah blah blah, right? That's could be written down as a strategy, but it's a mindset. And it becomes a mindset, it becomes ingrained, which then turns into a culture if there's more than one of you doing it. And that's how culture kind of shifts happen. And it's the same with innovation, surely. Anything that's different needs one or two people to enact it, or at least start the conversation. Invariably it ends up being written down somewhere, which is rubbish, let's see the action. However much you believe it could have an impact, or even how you can create systems and processes around it, and until you do it, and that's the most important word here, is doing something, and playing, and you'll never get it right, and give yourself permission to play with a purpose. And that's all I've ever done with learning social media and media and technology, and you see the cultures out there that have really embraced that, like Intel and all that, who've embraced the culture of play. Google is a perfect one. New Zealand is always seen as an innovative place.
Yeah.
Always in the kind of cultural context and the language that comes out.
Yeah.
And in some spaces I totally believe that, and the number 8 wire scenario, they will try things like that. But when you look around, there's pockets of it. Maybe it's just because it's such a small island and it's a small demographic that we expect more from it, because we think it's bigger than it is. So maybe by that virtue it's punching above its weight already. But isn't that a good thing then? Because now we want it to be more audacious and bold, and that's not a bad thing to want from the country.
No, absolutely.
Right, next up is episode 23 with Johnny Lynn and Chris Auld from Intergen. Another tech ed interview.
Yep, fascinating. Internet of Things, if you remember.
Yeah, that's right. And he had the great little box of gizmo.
That's right.
Which I call it, but it's probably not the technical term. And then we have episode 24 with Rumi Shavaz from Midas Infomedia. He was interesting because I know a little bit about the data analytics part of things.
Yep.
And some of the stuff we talked about was quite cool. And then we had episode 25, Bill and Brad from Datacom, who, that took a while to sign off, but, we got there in the end.
We got there in the end.
And then we had the Christmas do with interviews from all sorts of people, and we caught up with everyone, which you hopefully would have listened to the week before last.
Yeah,
if not, hurry up and get on there.
We won't put that one into here.
And then we went on to episode 27, which you would have listened to last week from Nathan Lee, talking about being passionate about what you do, which is kind of sums up the whole damn podcast, really.
Yeah, look, it's a great end to the interviews.
For software, it's long been, if you can imagine it, you can invent it, and you can start a business around it. For hardware, it's always been, you've got to have a whole team of design engineers, leaky engineers, a whole bloody crew.
Yeah.
Right? What's happening now is sort of the whole software revolution has come into the world of atoms. Right?
Yeah.
So if you could imagine it in software land, you could build it, and that's still the case. We are now in a stage where if you can imagine it in hardware land, you can prototype it, and you can get the man in, Shenzhen to build it for you. And you can fund it up on Kickstarter, and suddenly, startup land is coming to stuff other than just websites and apps.
So the maker worldview is starting to dribble into business worldview, if you like. I mean, so it's a crossover, but the tinkerers that we had, we're now going, well, we could do this stuff not just because I want to have my hot tub talking, but I can do things and have a business out of this, and away we go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, great examples would be the bicycle power meter market. If you want to see a market that's gone from, very expensive, very sophisticated $4,500 units measuring the power output in your legs for bicycling, and there's probably been half a dozen new ones released just this week, some of which started as sort of open source projects or Kickstarter projects, and they're down now, sort of $300 or $400.
Wow.
And just continuing the march downwards. Right? So it really is this, that ability to innovate in software is now becoming an ability to innovate in hardware. Cheap electronics, 3D printing, prototyping mechanisms, cloud connectivity. It's kind of exciting.
There's a change from a government point of view. So if you look at from a reporting point of view, right? First level is a lot of organizations will say, as you said, we are doing this thing, but that's just to take a tick to the minister, right? So if you look at some of our customers are moving beyond that tick level to the next level where you're really trying to understand what the issues the customers are facing. And get it to the staff so that the staff can see
and can do something about it.
So that is starting to happen, which is great.
Awesome.
So I think large organizations are doing good work, but people probably don't see it, but they're starting to do that. Which is great.
Students that are looking at next year, and even the ones that are looking to go into university at some point, then hopefully go through the summer of tech. What would your advice be, particularly from a technology bent or an approach, or what should they be thinking about now for the next year or 2 years, 3 years?
I'll answer first, then Brad will tack on because I know he's got opinions too.
Cool.
Personally, I like it when they take an interest in the technology that they're learning. So for me, it's great that they go out to university and they're learning programming, but it'd be nice to know that they're doing it for a personal reason rather than I just need to get a job at the end of my 4 years or end of my 3 years.
Yeah.
So I need to know that they're quite passionate about it, and usually that shows when they've developed something of their own at home rather than just as part of the projects they do at university.
So it doesn't matter what technology, just be passionate about it and show me stuff that fantastic.
Yeah, and the other key thing that we're looking for is evidence that people know how to operate in a team, which is a lot easier to do now than it ever used to be. But it's things like doing projects up on GitHub, or not just hacking on something that's just you. Like, it's good to go out and build things, fully support that. But if I have a choice between two developers and I can see one's made contributions to some big existing open source project and has had to work with the core maintainers and has said, I want to add this feature, and done some negotiation and put some code up there, and then had it reviewed and tweaked and taken the feedback and gone and made changes and then gotten it in and gotten something accepted. That's quite a big learning curve You know, the very first time I tried to fix something I thought was broken in Rails, which itself is a rather huge project, it was really hard to work out how does this thing even work? How am I supposed to take the thing that I think is correct and actually get it in there? Or am I wrong? Am I misunderstanding it? There's a lot of surface area. And that being able to interact with a team and work with something that's existing and make changes to it is far more typical of what we actually need.
Yeah.
It's not very often we're starting from a blank page.
It's got to be something you love. It's got to be something that keep you up at night.
Yeah.
And it's got to be something that you believe in, that when everybody else is telling you, no, this is not a good idea. Right? So that's the first thing I would say. Like, you know, I guess love what your idea and believe in it. That's certainly how I started Educa, right? So I started Educa because to love to my daughter. I want to know what's going on. I want to be more involved.
Yeah.
I want to help.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, I realised that I wasn't alone. Give you an example that I was up at night while I was travelling in Auckland, I think, at that time, meeting a customer. It's very late in the evening. Got an email from a grandmother who sent us an email, asked questions and how to use Educa. That was, you know, that was years ago.
Yeah.
And
Paul,
I was
business
doing
development,
I'm everyone, right?
Yes.
And she asked me a question, and she said, "I'm really glad you're here. You were there to help me because I really, really want to see what my grandson is up to." She lives in the UK.
Yeah.
The grandson went to a childcare centre in Lower Hutt. And that was the moment that I feel that's something that I create is valuable.
Making a difference.
And making an impact to people's
Yes.
lives. So you know, that was I guess, you know, love what I did and still love what I do. I think that's the most important. Well, not most important. That's definitely one of the factors you've got to look into.
Absolutely.
Because the whole journey is so hard.
Yeah.
Right? And if you can't even start the journey with maximum love and passion, might not as well.
Yeah, it's going to be really hard.
Yeah. So I think that's quite important.
Awesome answer.
And the second thing, I think it's important to listen in the multiple front though. But what I want to touch on is listen to the customers. You know, there's a constant debate that, you know, customer might not know what they want. But what I'm saying is that you've got to be open. You got to listen to what they tell you. You might not build everything they ask for, but you need to understand why they ask a particular thing. So if you build a product that really solves the customer's problem, as I mentioned very, very early on, they will help you to spread the word.
So that was the year that was with Access Granted, which was, you know, 27 to 28 episodes. So we're doing all right. We're on a roll.
It was pretty amazing, actually. I had one thing I would say to everybody who's listened to those generally 2-minute snippets. God, that was hard to get 2 minutes of goodness out of.
Yeah, there's just so much.
Some of them were just, okay, there's 25 minutes of goodness here.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just going to pick 2 minutes.
Some
That's
40,
not fair.
You know, 40 odd minutes.
Yeah. So all of them are on #me.co.nz. Looks, if you're intrigued by any of those interviews, those very small snippets, please go and listen to them.
Oh, other news, if they haven't realised, we're on iHeartRadio now.
Oh,
so you can check us out on there.
Yep.
Just quiet little plug while we're here.
Yep.
So yeah, that's cool for us.
So 20 thought this is the final one. Right, Raj.
Yeah, so let's sum it up.
What would you ask people now? We ask them with...
what makes you happy, Mike?
What makes me happy is the fact that we've got the 27. I like the fact that we flipped. Thank you, Owen, for giving us that feedback. And we flipped to the interviews, and it was been the best thing we've done.
That's right.
And it makes me happy to know that lots of people love the... I've got some feedback today, actually, that from a friend of mine who says, it's the best podcast out there. I listen to it when I go running.
Is that right?
And I just find that it made me smile.
I used to listen to podcasts when I started running.
Yeah.
And now I don't run.
So
I listen to podcasts.
Thank you, Sandy. And also...
That's awesome.
Also, I know that next year is going to be quite amazing. We've got some very big plans for Access Granted. I also know #Radio's got some big plans, so it's going to be quite amazing next year. So it makes me happy to know that we're a part of all this.
We're a show about something.
That's right. So, Raj, what makes you happy?
What makes me happy is that there it is. I chopped out 629 ums recently, just saying. Yeah, what makes me happy is we started something, right, and we thought, oh, yeah, this could fly a little bit, and we actually continued on and did it and got it sorted. Grew as we went along with the, the adjustments and things like that. Less jibber jabber, more interviews, all that kind of stuff. And that's what's making me happy right now, is that this podcast could be something quite interesting next year. And also, managed to do other few things this year, grow some work and all that. But that's the main thing about in this context, is we've actually managed to make something quite interesting that people actually like.
Yeah.
Which is kind of surprising to me, that
other people's stories.
That people like it. But yeah, it is other people's stories. That's what it's all about, eh?
Yeah.
That's the reason we did it, was to get that voice going, That seems to be, how I commented on the 3 News IT report that time.
Oh, the trade me slide.
Yeah, they talk about the slide. Well, I said, well, that's not the news, right?
That's right.
That's not news. What we create, hopefully, is a bit more interesting than that.
That's right.
That's the gap I saw.
And so, how was 2014 for you?
Oh, it's been a mission of a year. I have a few ups and downs, but all out overall, we've come out okay. And this podcast has been part of that.
I think that sums it up quite well, mate. I think that sums it up for me as well.
Everyone's basically had enough of this year, bring on next year.
Yeah. So, thank you to every single person that actually takes the time to subscribe, download, listen.
They tweet to us.
If you get back to us and if you respond to us, and a whole bunch of you have, that's fine. But if you just listen, and hopefully you get a smile and you learn something. And if nothing else, as Laura said in the thing, if you find someone you think, I want to talk to those people, then reach out and talk to them. But thank you so much for, I was going to say, being with us on this journey.
Oh, no, you didn't.
Going into that space.
And I said going forward.
And if we can go forward.
Yeah. Someone out there's won corporate bullshit bingo.
That's right. So we'll be running some things up flags next week, see who salutes them.
It's all a collaboration, really, isn't it?
Oh, we'll be running some synergies and see what paradigms we can synergise.
Well, it's a mind shift thing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a mind shift thing, and I think transformation is required.
Yeah. The rugby, in the end, was the winner on the day.
Exactly. And on all that bullshit, thank you very much. Have a great, happy New Year. We're back probably
sometime in Jan.
Yeah, sort of mid-January onwards. We've already got our next interview.
Yes.
Lined up.
That's right.
So that's with Melissa Clark-Reynolds.
Yeah.
So that will probably come out mid-January onwards.
Yeah, I think once everyone else is back, we'll be back in action too.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, guys. Thank you, Raj.
Well, thank you, mate. It's been great. It's been hilarious.
It's been
and
fun.
it's been quite a learning journey as well.
Awesome.
It's been quite cool. So cheers, everyone, and we'll see you next year.
Take care. Ka kite no.
#me.co.nz